The political unrest within the urbanized escape of Ravnica, treacherous terrain of ever the adventurous Zendikar, the somber moon of Innistrad, where the dead never lies, for long. Each of these worlds is called a plane, and they exist within the vast multiverse. Most people live and die without ever learning about the existence of such worlds. But some powerful wizards can reach beyond the blind eternities that separate each plane from one another. Such wizards are called planeswalkers. For more than the last 10 years, the story of Magic the Gathering has been revolved around a villainous dragon planeswalker, Nicol Bolas. Even before all of that, Nicol Bolas existed in the Magic stories since the 1994 with the set Legends. And now, with the latest set, War of the Spark, the millennia-old plans of the Elder Dragon will come to an end. War of the Spark will put the draconic genius against more than 30 planeswalkers, as they struggle to stop the invasion of Bolas. In order to explain the background of that war, we'll follow some sort of a chronological order of the latest sets to understand each of the players a little bit better. It all began more than 25,000 years ago, on the plain of Dominaria. An egg of twin brothers fell from the sky, and the brothers touched the soil together during their first moments. Like all the other elder dragons on the plain, the egg came from the legendary Earth Dragon. But Bolas and Ugin were the only dragons to be born as twins. Not only that, but they were also half the size of their other siblings. Shortly after, the brothers experienced the death of their newly hatched sister, Merevia Sal, and were forced to retreat. Bolas couldn't contain his fury, but Ugin urged him to seek their siblings and understand the world around them better. This event forged the entire worldview of Bolas, as he promised to never be weak like their fallen sister. Due to their sizes, Bolas and Ugin were constantly mocked by their siblings, especially by the monstrous Paladiamors. Although Bolas was simply called Ugin during that time, failed to even grow to the size of his twin, he lived in the shadow of his brother. As he served under their other sibling Arcades as a dragon lord in a human settlement, he came to realize the meek minds of humans and how easy it is to manipulate them. Confident in his newfound power, Bolas tried to trick Ugin into helping him to grow even more powerful. But his plan backfired completely. Ugin understood his brother never truly cared for him, and the shock caused his planeswalker spark to ignite. Ignition is the process of ascension. Those who were lucky enough to be born with a spark can awake their potential to travel between planes. The planeswalker spark usually ignites when faced with an emotional trauma or a mental shock. The new planeswalker almost always fails to contain the rush of power and planeswalks to a random plane. Ugin's ignition worked in a similar way, and for many years, Ugin disappeared from Dominaria. Ugin traversed the plains in pursuit of knowledge and in tandem with his amazement. Once he decided to return to his home plane, he found Dominaria in ravages between the War of the Elder Dragons. After losing many of his kind to the war, Ugin found Bolas and Arcades, sending their armies against each other. Believing his brother to be dead, Bolas thought of Ugin before him to be an impostor, but quickly came around to accept Ugin as his real brother, due to his calm and collected speech. Bolas invited Ugin to join him in being the emperor of everything, But Ugin had other plans. Ugin revealed his nature as a planeswalker to his brother, and deemed him nothing more than a speck in the great universe. After lamenting the rift between them, Ugin left Dominaria, but the fury Bolas felt caused his spark to ignite as well. During their years of travels, the two draconic planeswalkers tried to shape themselves into their best selves, as they were sure of a confrontation between them at some point. Finally, the two met in the meditation plane and fought for days. Ugin realized his brother's endless rage and let Bolas strike him. As Ugin fell to the waters of the meditation plane, the impact of the blow sent Bolas back into the blind eternities. Ugin managed to survive the blow and reformed himself as a spirit dragon in the plane's waters. Fearing the growing powers of Bolas, Ugin devised a way to trap him in a specific plane, unable to planeswalk ever again. On that plan, he worked together with another fellow planeswalker and the founder of the Guild Pact. Azor sacrificed his planeswalker spark to create the immortal sun, a device powerful enough to bind every planeswalker to the plane once activated. Afterwards, Azor stranded himself on the plane of Ixalan, waiting for Bolas to arrive. Before Ugin's plan could be put into work, this time Bolas managed to gain the upper hand and killed the spirit dragon for the good. But things didn't go exactly as he planned. Bolas' powers only grew stronger with each plane he found, each spell he learned, as he conquered one world after the other. But during his heydays, he also created his doom in the shape of Tetsuo Umezawa. Tetsuo killed one of the Dragon Lord's regents to call him out, and then made the dragon follow him into the meditation plane. As Tetsuo was capable of reshaping the plane within, he killed the dragon, but Bolas' essence endured until he found a chance to come back. As this video is mainly about Nicol Bolas and how the other planeswalkers tie into his ambitions, I won't go into details of the Mirage War or the Phyrexian invasion, but we'll have to talk about one specific planeswalker, Teferi. Teferi was a tremendously powerful time mage who studied in Tolarian Academy under the planeswalker Urza. As the pair and their friends prepared for the invasion of Phyrexia, Teferi was slain in an attack, and Urza tried to meddle with time to prevent his death. His planeswalker spark probably ignited sometime after seeing the changed world. Most of his friends were dead or lost, and those he still had lived and aged for years without him. Teferi's main role with Bolas began at the finale of the Phyrexian War. Refusing to fight Urza's war, Teferi removed parts of Dominaria from time, to hide them from the horror. Once he returned to the original timeline, he saw the consequences of his and his peer planeswalkers' actions. Meddling with the mana sources constantly finally broke them, and time rifts were appearing at everywhere in the multiverse. As Teferi tried to close those rifts, Nicol Bolas' essence managed to escape back into the real world thanks to these openings. After easily suppressing the time mage in a battle, Bolas realized the dire straits the universe was in, and led Teferi to try his solution. Together with many planeswalkers, Teferi sacrificed his planeswalker spark to cast a spell that will close the time rifts. Especially Jeska and her sacrifice as another planeswalker culminated in a huge spell named the Great Mending. The Mending managed to close all the time rifts, but changed the universe forever. The alterations on how the mana flowed also affected the nature of planeswalker sparks. The planeswalkers, who were once nigh invincible gods, became merely a shadow of their former selves. Those planeswalkers who were born after the Mending would never realize what sort of power they could have held. Nicol Bolas, whose only goal had been to become the true god of the multiverse, couldn't accept that change and decided to do everything in his power to surpass even his former self. And with the Mending, the Bolas real war finally began. In the following years, Bolas interacted with many planeswalkers to actualize a return to his omnipotent form. As he challenged Teferi during the incident of Time Rifts, he claimed even if Teferi fails, he still had a plan up his sleeve. That plan probably refers to the Elder spell, and he spent thousands of years to gather every necessary part of it. Although the exact purpose and necessities of the spell is unknown, it is pretty safe to assume the Elder spell, if succeed, will probably turn Bolas into the all-powerful soul god he always desired to be. As the name of War of the Spark suggests, Bolas needs to harvest a hefty amount of planeswalker sparks to power his spell. His attempts at creating the ritual site can be traced back to the plane of Amonkhet. Bolas probably visited the plane at some time before his demise and began working on the plane after his revival. Amonkhet is a plane with its own gods and protection. Bolas found a metal called Lazotep on the plane, which can be used to cover the organic skin and led the inorganic creations to be carried through planar portals. The Elder Dragon tricked Bontu, one of the gods of the plane, to betray the other gods, and wiped all the adults on the plane, as well as brainwashing the other gods. Bolas changed the whole history of the plane and devised a series of trials to harness the population of the plane. The citizens of Amonkhet would pass the trails of the gods, all in the service of the god pharaoh Nicol Bolas. By offering their bodies and souls to the god pharaoh in the afterlife, they retained their talents while they were alive, and became the god pharaoh's very own army of zombies, the Eternals. After some time, Bolas encountered another pre-Mending planeswalker, the necromancer Liliana West. Similarly to Dragon, Liliana was born in Dominaria, and she was the upstanding daughter of a renowned family. Her father was a war general with countless enemies, and Liliana was learning many proper things expected of her, including the healing magic. On one fateful day, her father's enemies cursed Josu, her brother. The instructor Lady Anna sent her to gather the ingredients for a healing potion. When she found the grove of the Essis tree, it was already raised in spite. At that point, a strange man claiming to be her father's friend appeared to Liliana and urged her to revive the grove for her brother's salvation. Restoring the tree, Liliana hurriedly prepared a potion to help Josu, despite her instructor's dismay. The potion worked, and her brother was saved. Well, at first, Liliana's potion put Josu into frenzy and caused him to kill all the servants in the house. Terrified, Liliana knew she had to stop the creature her brother turned into, and in a rush animated the corpses of the servants to fight against him. But the horror caused Liliana to reach her limits, and her planeswalker spark ignited. The whole West family turned into a legend in Dominaria, and Liliana spent her years escaping from the past, all except the friend of her father, the man at the grove, the Raven Man. The Raven Man, who forced her to kill Josu, turned out to be an enigmatic entity and never left the trail of Liliana, guiding her towards an unknown end ever forward. Liliana always tried to live the best life she could, until the Mending. In an instant, she lost all her powers and aged beyond recognition. In order to keep herself alive, she met with the planeswalker Bolas. In exchange for her services, Bolas accepted to broker a deal with 4 powerful demons to give Liliana eternal youth and power. Kotofet, Griselbrand, Razaket, and Balzanlok used Liliana to fulfill all sorts of demands, and she became trapped in her pact. Advancing his plans, Bolas founded a planeswalker organization consisting of his agents, the Infinite Consortium. At some point in time, Alara was broken into 5 different shards, each deprived of 2 colors of mana, and became planes of their own. Expecting the upcoming conflux that was supposed to reunite the shards, Bolas began to influence the plane to cause an all-scale war, situating himself on top of the deathless shard of Grixis. Bolas met with many of his agents and adversaries during that time. Esper was a plane dictated by a constant need of learning. The artificers of Esper used a material called Ethereum to advance their inventions, and a strict hierarchy of classes forced the powerless to mine Ethereum for the influencers of the society. Tezzeret was one of those loveborns who lost her aging mother to an uncaring highborn's carriage. Tezzeret never felt much love for his mother, but raged against anyone who looked down on him. When he was barely 10 years old, he began killing the mothers of those who mocked him. Tezzeret had the power of rhabdomancy, the ability to track metals. As he kept on mining Ethereum, his talent led him to steal some of it pretty easily. After collecting enough of it to attend the academy, he left his father behind. Tezzeret rose in the society in an instant. He was more than capable in his studies, practically a genius who devoured the information as a whole. Although he was still seen as a loveborn, his peers couldn't deny his talent. Once he replaced his right arm with a metal arm of 10 kilos, infused with Ethereum, he proved the worth of his education. Even after his success, because of his birth, he still struggled to continue his academic career. But through a few impactful assassinations, he came closer to the source of all teachings in Esper, Codex Ethereum. Once he decided it was the right time to infiltrate the chamber of Codex, he found it to be completely empty. The whole society of Esper, the whole structure of its academical dominions, was a lie. The shock he felt caused his spark to ignite, and he found himself before Nicol Bolas in Grixis. Nicol Bolas accepted Tezzeret into his organization for the value he saw in his capabilities, but Tezzeret quickly took over the consortium, rebelling against the dragon. In order to protect himself against the telepathic attacks of Bolas, Tezzeret employed the mind mage Jace Beleren. During their time in consortium, Jace and Liliana Vess also met and grew closer. As the second part of this video will mainly focus on the Gatewatch members, I'll talk about the situation from Jace's perspective during the events of Kaladesh's story. But Jace not only failed to protect Tezzeret, but he also couldn't keep up with the abusive ultimatums of him. Not long after, the two had to face each other, and Jace, with the help of Liliana, mortally wounded Tezzeret. Although this whole situation turned out to be Liliana's plan with Bolas from the very start, Bolas reclaimed the broken body of Tezzeret, recreating and marking him to remember his true master. The short-lived inconvenience of consortium didn't really affect any of Bolas' plans, as the sacrifice of Alara was still on its way. Bolas used another planeswalker named Sarkhan Vol to usher in the conflux. Sarkhan was born on Tarkir, the plane where Ugin created more of his kin with the dragon storms. Ugin also gave his teachings to the inhabitants to create a perfect plane. But after Ugin's disappearance, the dragon storms died down. The humans of the plane overcame the dragons, and the rule of Khans began, each struggling to tear down the other. Sarkhan was a member of the vicious Mardu Horde, but he was still dissatisfied with being a general in this war-ridden world. Struggling to find a meaning, he tried to find a teaching worth believing in. He sought out the shamans in the mountains, but he found little reason to believe in the deceased ancestors and spirits they communicate with. During his only battle as a general, he heard the voice of a long-gone dragon and heeded its words to sacrifice his own clan in a blood magic to cleanse the battlefield. Channeling the power he gained with the sacrificial magic, his planeswalker spark ignited, and he found himself in the volcanic landscape of Jand, one of the shards of Alara. Sarkhan continued to search a strong dragon to pledge his alliance. His travels got him caught up in the schemes of Bolas. He accidentally lent a hand to his agent by activating an obelisk to converge the shards. After finally meeting with the Dragon Master, he found a reason in its power and allied himself with Bolas. Bolas used him to see discord between regions to fuel the Maelstrom. Maelstrom would appear from the convergence of the shards. Everything was going according to the plan, until he created an enemy planeswalker during his manipulations, Ajani Goldmane. Ajani came to life as an albino leonin in the plane of Naya. Because of his white fur, he never found a place for himself among his brethren, but his brother Jazal proudly climbed the steps and became the Ka of his clan. Despite this, Jazal never left his brother's side and constantly tried to find a place for him in the clan. The division between Ajani and his kin was also due to the extraordinary powers of the Leonin. Ajani could peer into the souls of others and manipulate that very soul, strengthening or healing it in the process. Ajani always considered being the best healer in the clan, but he still failed to gain a place for himself. Even still, he never turned his back to the clan and always tried to put all of his capabilities into good use. Ajani's life changed when their campsite was attacked by a shadowy figure during one night. Ajani's planeswalker spark ignited when he found the dead body of his brother. After many travels between the shards, in search of his brother's killer, Ajani found out Bolas was behind the death of his brother. To further destabilize the plane, Ajani tried his best to track the dragon planeswalker, but he was still late to prevent Bolas from accessing the overflowing mana flourished from the conflux. Bolas began feeding on the Maelstrom to gain his lost powers back. Ajani, in a desperate attempt, used whatever was left of Maelstrom to construct a spiritual copy of Bolas and banished him from the plane. Although Ajani saved the plane, and his clan offered him the position of Ka, Ajani left everything behind to help multiverse against the threat of tyranny. Bolas' failure on Alara made Sarkhan question his beliefs in the once god, but Bolas quickly turned his eyes to another plane. To push the planeswalkers of the multiverse towards his goals, Bolas sent Sarkhan to the plane of Zendikar in search of the Eye of Ugin. The tremulous mana of Zendikar attracted all kinds of planeswalkers over the years and caused the very terrain of the land to shift constantly. Unbeknownst to the many, Zendikar's unique situation was the cause of an event that happened 6,000 years ago. Blind eternities between the planes are home to all kinds of ancient, foreign beings. As they exist in the void amongst the planes, their alien nature is hard to be grasped by the ordinary. One such force was called the Eldrazi, devourers of mana in any form. The shapeless Eldrazi consumed the planes as a whole, leaving only barren wastelands behind. As their threat to the multiverse grew after the decimated planes, a trio of planeswalkers devised a plan to stop them. Those planeswalkers were the ancient vampire Sorin Markov, the renowned lithomancer and core, Nahiri, and colorless dragon, Ugin. Sorin's home planet Innistrad faced a devastating famine more than 8,000 years ago. His grandfather Edgar Markov based a spell on the ever-shifting moon of Innistrad. As the moon of the plane affected its citizens emotionally and sometimes even physically, Edgar turned his fellow humans into beings capable of sustaining with blood, or in other words, into vampires. When it was Sorin's turn to undergo the ritual, the pain he felt from the transformation caused his planeswalker spark to ignite. Sorin felt little reason to return to his home plane for decades, but in the end saw the power shifts between the humans and the vampires. In his attempts to prevent the dark beings of Innistrad to completely eradicate the humans and revert to cannibalism, Sorin became the silent protector of Innistrad. Some vampires saw him as a betrayer to his own race, but some understood his reasons. Nahiri, on the other hand, was a core, native to the plane of Zendikar. Her skills on lithomancy allowed her to shape all kinds of stones, and her runic knowledge let her devise hydrants with great magical prowess. Understanding the overflowing mana of the plane, Nahiri joined a plan to entrap the Eldrazi to the plane for the greater good of the multiverse. Nahiri devised a hydran network to manifest the Eldrazi in the physical form and trap them within. Sorin was used as a bait with his life-leeching powers to direct the Eldrazi to Zendikar, and Ugin used his colorless flames to battle the Eldrazi. The three planeswalkers succeeded in creating a plane-wide prison to prevent the Eldrazi from ever leaving the plane, and sealed all of their magic in the Eye of Ugin, a secret place deep in the mountains of Zendikar. Nahiri stayed behind as a guardian of the plane, and the three of them promised to meet in any case of emergency. Bolas became aware of his brother's special seal after peering into Ugin's memories on the plane of Tarkir. He wanted to see how a group of planeswalkers would react to an interplanar threat, and guided his agents to break the seal on the Eldrazi. Since many of these planeswalkers would create the source to oppose Bolas directly, we'll talk about their origins in short due. But in the meanwhile, as three planeswalkers created the seal, three planeswalkers would be needed to break it. Bolas was already placed Sarkhan on the plane to guide the newcomers. Now he needed to replicate his brother's colorless flames to trick the seal placed by Ugin. He directed Chandra Nalar, a furious pyromancer who saw herself as the sole reason of his family's demise, into a powerful scroll created by Ugin to study the invisible flames. Obviously, he not only needed another planeswalker to achieve 3, but also he was aware of the complexity of the spell. He sent the Mind Mage Jace after him to erase Chandra's memories of the spell and pique his interest in the scroll. But Chandra already managed to duplicate the scroll and follow the trail to its origins in Zendikar. Chandra's travels made her path came into contact with Sarkhan, and the two descended into the Eye of Ugin. In the Eye, Sarkhan used his draconic powers to attack Chandra, and Jace, in his pursuit of Chandra, attacked Sarkhan without knowing about his dragon form. Jace and Chandra combined their powers to recreate the colorless flames of Ugin to defeat Sarkhan, and unknowingly broke the seal of the Eye. On the outside, the grip over the Eldrazi loosened, and the otherworldly drones began appearing all over the plane. Defeated, Sarkhan saw the vision of a dead dragon, as countless Eldrazi escaped from his corpse. As Sarkhan realized the true intents of his master, a voice from beyond called him back to the plane of Tarkir. Now, the Eldrazi roamed free on the plane of Zendikar, and the threat must be answered if there were to be any hope for the multiverse. Bolas initiated the chain of events that would end up as the Gatewatch, a group of planeswalkers dedicated to oppose any threat to the multiverse. Before the Gatewatch could come together and oppose the tyranny of Bolas, an ace against their opponents was waiting in Tarkir. Sarkhan, after heeding the call of the ancient dragon, found himself among the struggles of Khans once more. As the voices drove Sarkhan to the edge of madness, a help came from the collected leader of the Jeskai monk. Narset, in her pursuit of spirits to the fraying mind of Sarkhan, decided to lend a hand to him. Tarkir was an endless bloodshed, and even amongst her own clan, the elders were working behind her to fuel these skirmishes more. Narset and Sarkhan grew a friendship built upon their dreams of Tarkir, and followed the voice in Sarkhan's mind to Ugin's tomb. In his madness, Sarkhan revealed the truths about planeswalkers, Nicol Bolas and Ugin to Narset. As they began their descent into the tomb, Zurgo, the Khan of the Mardu clan, attacked Sarkhan for his betrayal to his own clanman years ago. Narset stayed behind to buy Sarkhan some time, but perished at the hands of Zurgo. Well, she kinda did. Things get a little bit more interesting from here. In the tomb, Sarkhan accessed the nexus of Ugin and found himself in the ancient Tarkir, just after the fight between Ugin and Bolas. Using a gleaming hedron he took from the eye of Ugin, Sarkhan created a cocoon for Ugin's corpse, and in time, dragon storms rekindled, and new dragons soared the skies of Tarkir once more. When Sarkhan returned to his own timeline, he saw a Tarkir reborn. Khans never drove dragons to extinction, and in place of the clans, dragons ruled the Tarkir. Sarkhan turned into a paradox in the new timeline. He was never actually born and appeared out of thin air. New timeline also favored another kind soul. Narset, under the wings of the wise dragon master Ojutai, became immersed in the history of Tarkir. Due to her unique workings of her mind, she processed information differently than her peers, and also had troubles to concentrate on a single thing at a time. As she delved deeper and deeper into the archives of Ojutai, Narset learned about the time where humans once ruled Tarkir. Realization of that falsified history caused her planeswalker spark to ignite, but her immensely concentrated mind kept her in control, and she managed to stay in Tarkir. Sarkhan and Narset continued to try to make sense of the world around them, as well as their newfound powers, and united once again, even though Narset didn't remember him. Finally, in the new timeline, the Sorin of the Tree came to Tarkir in search of Ugin against the threat of Eldrazi. Sorin released Ugin from the cocoon, reviving the spirit dragon once more. Now the multiverse was ready to fight back against the Eldrazi.